Elwood P. Dowd is a kind man who insists on including his best friend, an invisible 6'3.5" rabbit, in all of his activities. Elwood's eccentric behavior causes concern for his family, especially for his sister Vita. When she tries to have him committed to a sanitarium, an unexpected revelation occurs that leads Vita to wonder what it truly means to be happy and accepted. Whether real or imaginary, the rabbit becomes a symbol of kindness in a world that overlooks the beauty of the unconventional, a world that can't always see Harvey.
Hey, welcome back to Movie Friends. I'm Michelle,
And I'm Seth.
and today we are talking about Harvey from 1950. Directed by Henry Koster, screenplay by Mary Chase and Oscar Brodney, based off the play by Mary Chase, cinematography by William H. Daniels, composed by Frank Skinner, edited by Ralph Dawson, and costume design by Ori Kelly. Starring James Stewart, Josephine Hull, Charles Drake, Peggy Dow, and Cecil Kellaway. Hey Seth, how are you?
I'm very good. I brought a guest with me today.
You did? Is it Harvey?
He's right here.
Wow.
Say hello, Harvey. I don't know. Hi.
Hey, listen, maybe Harvey's with me.
That's true. Maybe he's with all of us.
Super exciting, friends at home. Seth has a pop filter, and it's bright green, and I love it.
I do. I finally changed from the windscreen to the stuck on the microphone pop filter. It was too much, you know?
I get
I
it.
don't like having appendages and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's the little things in life. Like, I look at you virtually every single week. So if something changes, like if you have
Right.
Harvey with you and a pop filter, wow.
Yeah. And Michelle's in a different room than normal,
Yeah, unfortunately.
which we haven't shared your story and we don't need to.
Well, I mean, it's just my...
That sounds real bad. Maybe we do need to now.
Well, I don't know how much the people care. I'm sure they're here for the movies, but life catch up. My basement is under renovation. My office and studio are under renovation. We're fixing flooding and leaking issues. So things are just a little upside down in my world.
It sucks.
It sucks.
But we're here. And ultimately, it will be a good thing.
No, of course. It's just the momentary of it all. I'm just overwhelmed and stressed and like kind of grumpy. Like I'm really grumpy.
Hey, I've got good news for you.
Do you?
Yeah. We have to give a shout out to not one, but two new patrons this week.
I can't believe it. Like truly, best part. Best part to hear that we got two new patrons. I'm not even kidding you. Like this was a happy of mine.
Oh, okay. Good.
Happy of my days have been the new patrons.
So huge shout out to Skylar and Dan. Thank you both so much for signing up. It's really encouraging. Really helps, you know?
I mean, not only does it help, but like I just expressed to you guys how I've been really grumpy, but seeing the new patron alert really makes me happy and smile. And I do like a like Seth texted me about the Dan one, and I was like, oh, yeah.
I can't. You turned into the guy from Disturbed. Ooh,
oh, you broke me. Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a throwback. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And they got in just in time to vote for next week's episode, next month's theme. It's very exciting.
It's very exciting.
I have loved how this show has transformed from Seth controlling everything to Seth controlling less and less and less stuff. It's been great. I love it so much.
Okay, so I'm glad to hear that. If we can make your life just a little bit easier, that makes me
that really should be everyone's goal, I think.
Okay, I take all of that back.
It's making my life easier.
Patrons, don't vote. Have Seth chase you down. Tell him you need to pick out themes. Just kidding.
We also have some emails.
They come through. Every week I'm surprised when we get emails.
I know, right? First one is actually from Skylar, and I am not going to read the whole email because there are some slight spoilers, perhaps, for challengers. But we did an episode on challengers last week,
Mm-hmm.
and the subject line is challengers. And then the first line of the email says, okay, so you're both wrong about challengers. And
Whoa.
I loved getting this email so much because sometimes I feel like people only want to reach out when they agree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we like to actually discuss things and go uh, and hear different opinions. So thank you very much for disagreeing. And I agree with the message of this email. So, like I said, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but here we go. Okay, so you're both wrong about challengers. Yeah, sure, Mr. Luca has a good eye, but the shot from below the tennis court was where he finally lost me. I was marginally with the movie right up until that point, and that shot tipped it over into too goofy for me. You see, here's the thing the movie wants to act like the characters are static, and it's just not believable. And then I'm going to skip down a little bit because they describe some events in the movie. These are the most life changing events that you can have. Admittedly, I've never been one of the world's greatest tennis players, so I don't know how to deal with that, but still, the movie doesn't allow for any growth. All the characters are the same at 31 as they were at 18. Nonsense. And I agree. Again, thank you very much for that email. Thank you for that opinion. And I agree. And that's something that you and I have talked about many times where you meet a character when they're 10 and then we jump ahead and they're 50 and it's like as if nothing has happened in their life in between.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so thank you.
Did you like Challengers?
I wouldn't say it's like my movie of the year or
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
because the year is not even half over,
Right.
but I really enjoyed it. Good drama.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think you don't need to know about sports to watch it. I didn't and still enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Cool.
and the soundtrack is awesome, and I've been listening to it. I've just been doing mundane things around my house, and it makes me feel like I'm fighting for my life.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, it's very like
Scrub the dishes, fold the laundry. Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
Got another email from Josie, and she's responding to our episode on Little Women. She says, first off, great episode. It genuinely made my Monday all the better. Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Second, Looney Tunes Back in Action is better than Space Jam. Sorry, I had to speak my truth. Third, Friends should never be rebooted, but if it were, I would make a Muppet reboot where all of the friends are Muppets except Joey.
Oh my goodness. I absolutely love that idea, Josie.
She goes on to say, also, when I was young and I read Little Women for the first time and then watched the movie and such, I wanted to be Jo so bad. I mean, we both were called Jo, and she's so cool, and I wanted to be her. But as I've gotten older, I realized I have always been Amy and still am, and I'm okay with that. I too didn't like Amy when I was young, but I think it's because she was the most like me, an annoying little girl. And so I couldn't stand her. But now I resonate with her childlike wonder and dreams of being rich and important, and constantly wanting to be older than she is. But then, growing up and realizing those dreams can come true, but maybe they look a little different, and maybe growing up so fast isn't a good thing. Not sure if that makes sense, but yeah. Thanks so much for covering Little Women. Sorry this was a long email. And then she sent a follow up email that said, forgot to sign off and say, this is Josie.
Oh my goodness. I think that makes perfect sense. And thank you for
Oh,
sharing
totally.
that with us because I don't know how
Yeah,
many people would admit that. Not that there's
right.
anything wrong with that, but admit that, oh, I'm actually an Amy.
Yeah. And we came to Amy's
We
defense a
sure
little
did.
in our
We sure
episode. Yeah.
did. Yeah.
And we have one more email. This one, subject line Little Women. And this one says, Friends recast. I need to see that. And then they give their Friends reboot cast. So they give Buscemi as Chandler, Bill Murray as Joey, Luke Wilson as Ross, Mary Steenburgen as Phoebe, Gwyneth Paltrow as Rachel, and Lena Dunham as Monica.
Wow.
I love the idea of Steve Buscemi as Chandler.
Joey, right? Wasn't Bill Murray Chandler?
Bill Murray was Joey.
Bill Murray was Joey. Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I feel these are very not just miscast, but that's my own opinion. I'm like, I don't know why I'm judging this scenario. I apologize, whoever wrote this in. I like came up to bat. Did you see how defensive I just got?
I did. I did.
Yeah, what is that about? We should back it up. Everybody.
Especially because you haven't submitted your friend's recast yet.
So typical of me to go and judge and yet not provide my own.
They go on to say, didn't realize the influence this movie had on the younger VAR guy. That Hush Puppy story. That half-star rating is infuriating. Perfect cast and new segment with a whole bunch of exclamation points. And that's from Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Thanks for sending your roster.
Hey, before we move on, Josie was referring to Space Jam and Looney Tunes because we're going to be doing a live show September 21st, 2024, Long Island, New York. Come out, hang out. We're going to be talking about Space Jam. It's going to be great.
We're really excited. More details to follow, but be there or be square.
Yep. We've got really funny stuff planned. If you're like, I don't know if I want to go because it's like just like listening to an episode, you want to go.
No, you want to go.
Trust me.
You want to go.
There's going to be stuff flying at your face.
Don't give it away, Seth. Come on now.
Surprise guests.
Yeah.
There's going to be, oh man, now I got to get a surprise guest.
We have a surprise guest. I can't believe you forgot about who we booked.
Right. That's right. Right.
Yeah. But don't say too much more. You just have to be there.
Mike, do you know what I love most about movies?
Oh, that's easy, Kier. Celebrity gossip.
No. Though I do love a good A-list rivalry.
Is it the civil film discourse that you find on social media?
Oh, Mike. No, what I love most about movies is watching them and obsessing about them, learning more about their history, how they're made, and okay, maybe I love the behind-the-scenes drama too.
Hey, that's what I love. And it's why we started the Filmographers podcast, the show where we study an entire director's career, one film at a time.
In our first season, we're focusing on Steven Soderbergh, a man who's directed movies you know and love like Ocean's 11, Out of Sight, and Magic Mike. And movies you don't know you love yet, like Bubble and Schizopolis.
No stone unturned. That's what makes us the Filmographers.
Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find all our episodes at filmographerspodcast.com.
Also, you can follow us on Instagram or X, where you'll find us trolling for the latest celebrity gossip.
Okay, before we get into our discussion of Harvey, let's write down what we think we're going to rate this movie. So I'm going to write down what Seth is going. I'm going to write down what I think Seth is going to rate this movie, and he's going to write down what he thinks I'm going to rate this movie.
Yep.
If y'all made it through that statement, thank you for sticking around.
Got my pencil. I got a new little book.
Oh, cute.
All right, here we go. All right, I'm locked in.
Okay. Me too. All right. Usually before a movie, if one of us hasn't seen it, we record our pre-watch thought. Or sometimes if we haven't seen a movie in a while, we'll still record our pre-watch thought. But we both have seen this. So Seth, tell me, when was the first time you saw Harvey? What's your relationship with this movie?
I only saw Harvey within the last 2 years.
Oh.
Not sure exactly when. Yep. Never seen it. I had heard about it for years and years.
Yeah.
Mostly the stage version. I think that when I was a teenager, maybe like a local high school was doing Harvey or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really familiar with like the story and maybe like the themes of it. I had just never watched it. And then I watched it. And when I watched it, I didn't really like super love it. And I was kind of like, that's interesting.
Okay. I accept that. Yeah. My face before didn't, but I do as a person accept that answer.
Yeah.
How was it watching this time around?
So I watched this a few times. I watched this about 2.5 times.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I was like, I feel like this is just not fast paced enough. Like it feels like we're doing like a screwball comedy from around that time period, but I'm more used to like Cary Grant
Mm-hmm.
and like really, really fast and, moving.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't help that Vita,
Yeah. Josephine Hull. Mm-hmm.
the actress who plays Vita, is one of the aunts from Arsenic and Old Lace,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of my favorite comedies ever. And so I just kind of felt like I was watching the movie on slow mo. And then the second time I watched it, I appreciated it much more.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I was first shown this movie in high school, my first period TV and film class. And we were watching movies like Blade Runner, Lawrence of Arabia, Casablanca.
In high school.
In high school, first period TV and film.
Amazing.
Yeah. That being said, I was falling asleep because like Lawrence of Arabia, if you've ever seen it,
I haven't.
it's long. And Blade Runner is super dark. And when you turn off the lights, you just fall asleep.
And very slow.
Very slow.
Yes.
We also did Casablanca, which I did enjoy. And then we got into, we watched Harrison Bergeron, the TV series.
Never.
We did Logan's Run, which I loved.
Yeah.
And then we watched Harvey. And I felt like this was such a breath of fresh air of what I was being shown. And I felt like this is something that I've never seen before. So this to me was such like a pivotal watching moment where I was like, it instantly, like from watching it once, I boldly made it my favorite film.
Wow. Oh yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. That being said, I showed it to Ant when we first started dating and he enjoyed it, but I actually haven't watched it since.
Okay.
So going into this, I was all proud to rewatch it. And I was like, what if I hate this? What if it's like, I've been saying, oh, Harvey's one of my favorite movies. It's so good. I remember it so fondly. And then I watched it and I was like, okay, yeah, I really do still really love this. And it was the first time in a year of us doing this that it made me want to start it right over again after it ended.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, I'm probably going to watch it again at some point this week because,
wow.
Yeah, I have never felt that way about any of the movies we've covered and even the stuff that like I've chosen.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? It's weird to me. I'm still like dealing with that thought process for me.
No, I don't think we've talked about this before. So if you're listening, I'm sorry if this is an old conversation, but
yeah,
is rewatchability a factor in the greatness of a movie?
Mm-hmm.
And movie people have this discussion a lot, and the jury is kind of out. It depends, Oh, I could watch Back to the Future 100 times. I could watch Clifford 100 times, and I have. That doesn't make it like a great movie. And everyone has that one movie where you watch it and you're like, wow, that was amazing. I will never see that again. I have many, many movies that are like that. And now I'm not saying I would never, but I'm like, I'm done. I don't need to see it again. So that feeling that you have, though, it is so special when it comes around.
Yeah.
I've only done that with maybe 5 movies in my life.
Yeah.
Gus Van Sant's Elephant. As soon as it ended, I watched it again. Capote with Philip Seymour Hoffman. As soon as it ended, I restarted it. Jennifer's Body.
Wow. I love this mixed bag.
I watched Jennifer's Body 3 times in 24 hours, and I just had to keep showing people. I was like, come over and watch this movie, please. It's so good. Passion of Joan of Arc. And I'm sure there was another one in there, but those are the ones that I remember off the top of my head. So yeah, I'll just say like, I think it's just a special thing for that movie when it happens, but it's not necessarily like a thumbs down to any other movie.
And I'm not even going on to say like this movie's amazing and it's perfect. It's just, it came at the right place in my life at that time when I was 17, 18. And this week, watching it really comforted me. So, I'm actually very surprised with how I felt. But I'm glad that I still love it because that would have been a real bummer. Hey, listen, the trajectory of this episode would have gone in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But this is our third time covering Jimmy Jams on this podcast.
Jimmy Stewart.
We love Jimmy Stewart. I mean,
We do.
everything he's in, he's so charming. We covered him in It's a Wonderful Life, covered him in Rear Window. Now we're doing Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel he has an amazing performance in this movie. And there's so many different ways to look at this story. It's a really simple story.
Yes.
We could
very, very simple.
We could talk about, and I'm sure we will, how corrupt and unstable the psychiatric institutions are, the evaluation of mental health, dealing with grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
How women are treated. But then we can look at like the simplicity and the beauty of being kind and believing in the fantastical.
Also, and I just want to say this before we move on and I forget to mention it.
Yeah.
This is never mentioned in the movies that take place in one day.
Is this one day? That was actually a question I
This
had
is
for
one.
you.
Yeah, we start in the morning. He heads out. We go through the party. We go through, and they bring him straight to the asylum, and then he leaves. It's all one day.
It's a very
Because throughout the
long
day, he keeps inviting people over for dinner tomorrow night.
Right at 10 p.m.
Yep.
Or whenever, tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering that. Wow.
And it deserves to be.
Right. I mean, it adds to the simplicity of it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was originally a play written by Mary Chase. Came out in 1944. Was on Broadway for 4 years. Do you think this feels like a play?
I do. I don't mind play movies.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're watching a movie, you can be like, this was based on a play.
Right.
And you look it up and you're like, oh yeah. Or this was based on a book.
Yeah.
You can just kind of
Uh-huh.
tell. With this one though, they're walking around, they're doing things, they're moving, the camera's moving. We're not just stuck in one spot.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't bother me. People will throw that criticism at a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, it feels like a play. Well, it's not. They're not actually there live in front of you. This is a film. It looks like a play, but who cares?
Yeah.
I don't see why that's like a knock against it. And it's a great play. I think they said if you don't account for musicals, this is the 6th longest running play in Broadway history.
Yeah.
And she won a Pulitzer Prize
She sure
for drama.
did. Mm-hmm.
Like, come on, who cares if it looks like a play? It's a great play.
Yeah. So let's talk about Jimmy Stewart and his portrayal of Elwood P. Dowd. Dowd, Elwood P. Let me give you my card.
Do we ever see what's on the card?
Well, we know it's his address and 2 numbers, but one of the numbers isn't in service anymore, so don't call that one.
Right. If you need me, call this one, not that one.
Right. So what do you think?
I have one very specific read on this entire movie, which I feel kind of colors everything. And not that I'm not open to different interpretations, but to me, it's so clear what's happening in this movie. So I feel like I not to dodge your question, but I feel like I need to say that first.
Please say that.
Okay.
Yes, please say what you're going to say.
I texted you earlier. We didn't really talk a lot about this movie in between.
No.
I've been dying on my couch for the last 2 days. Made a miraculous recovery. I drank some martinis. No, I'm just kidding. I did look up the recipe to make martinis, though, and I found out that it's not vodka. I thought a martini
gin.
was a vodka with olive in it.
It's gin, like a gin martini.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that I did text you, though, was Harvey is a cryptid movie.
Mm-hmm.
So Mary Chase said that she was inspired to she became a journalist and a writer.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote many plays. None were near as successful as Harvey. 3 were made into movies.
Yep.
And she said that she, as a little kid, was told stories by her dad and uncles and grandfathers who were from Europe, like Ireland and England.
Mm-hmm.
And a puka is a cryptid. I almost said a real cryptid.
It's a mischievous creature in Irish folklore.
Yeah, it's the spirit of a fairy
Yeah.
that manifests physically as a large animal.
Yep.
Sometimes a large hare.
Yeah.
So, okay. Elwood knows what a puka is. Elwood also drinks a lot. But 3 times in the film, we see Harvey physically interact with something.
Mm-hmm.
So you could look at Chumley
Mm-hmm.
and say, oh, it's just shared delusion. But Harvey is moving things.
Yes.
And so I believe fully that Harvey is real, that this is a story about a man who really sees a puka.
Yeah.
So now everything that he does actually is that nice and joyous and kind. And when he describes how Harvey can like stop a clock
Yeah.
and like stop time, I was like, you're losing me a little bit here. But just the idea that you could stop time and go about and enjoy yourself.
Right.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting to me.
Yeah.
So his performance is very childlike, paired with a drunk person. Because he's drinking throughout the entire day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It is, that is mentioned a lot, as you know, his sister brings it up that he drinks a lot, and we
Mhm.
see him at the bar a lot, but he's not like a
Mhm.
sloppy drunk. He's held together the entire time. And so you're like, yeah, I believe, I agree with you that Harvey is real in
Okay.
this story.
Okay.
Where it can go a little bit gray is we learn early on that Harvey, like Vita and Myrtle May, her daughter, are living, which, what a name, right?
All of the names in this are outrageous.
Let me back up. Not Harvey. Elwood is living with Vita and her daughter.
Well, Harvey is living
Harvey
there.
too, yes, but they're all living together because
Yeah.
their mother left Elwood everything. And Vita tells the story about how their mother died in Elwood's arms.
Mm-hmm.
And Myrtle May has the great follow-up of, well, how'd she know she was going to die in his arms? And that's how he gets everything. And, Vita brushes it off, but I think we understand the bigger picture here that,
Right.
this is
Right.
the youngest son and the mother loved him. And so there's a lot of grief happening in this. And so it's like, as soon as like the mother passes away, Elwood starts having and seeing and meets Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you could say that Harvey, this illusion came to him at the right time for comfort.
Right.
And Joseph and Vita, in the beginning, we see how flustered she is of the fact that she doesn't want to deal with her brother who brings around Harvey. But then she even admits later on in the sanitarium of how she sometimes sees Harvey too.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And that's when I think we as viewers are like, we're starting to not know what to believe. Because again, Harvey could not be real and she still sees him just because of how
Correct.
crazy
Correct.
he is driving her, right?
Right.
Sorry, I was pulling up Letterboxd because I wanted to see all of these names because they're just so insane. I think the 3 films that we've done with Jimmy Stewart, it's a good mix of
It is.
different types of performances.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Like LB in Rear Window is just such a jerk.
Yeah.
And, Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, he's so good-hearted, but he's also very like put upon.
Mm-hmm.
Elwood is never put upon, ever. He is always, someone's like, okay, I'm gonna take you for a bath, and he's like, okay, sure. And then when Vita is like, please take the medicine, he's just like, well, I've always said you should get what you want. Okay, I'll do it. Like, very rarely is he ever not in this kind of like stupor, and I think that choice kind of delays our ability to understand what's happening, because it's like, what's wrong with this guy?
Is it brought upon because of grief?
Did Harvey choose Elwood because he saw him in pain?
Or did Elwood choose Harvey because he needed to see him?
Right. Right. Maybe he was able to see him.
Right.
I mean, he says that he was putting his friend in a cab and his friend was very drunk.
Yes.
And he hears a voice behind him. So I think Harvey chose Elwood.
Yeah, and I think Elwood chose Harvey because you can choose to see the pukas when you want to, and then they can make themselves visible for when you need it. And so
Right.
it kind of also makes me think of Totoro.
Sure. Yeah. Good connection. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the end of the episode. We solved all of the questions here.
I think that the movie is, though, saying a lot about the state of how we treat mentally ill people
Yes.
in 1950.
Yes.
Like, all of that stuff is still happening and is still true. I just believe that Harvey's real.
I agree.
I saw him open the gate.
He opened the gate. He had.
Yeah.
What do you think about the hat?
That was also funny. And I noticed when I watched it for the first time, I was like, why does Elwood have two hats like at all times?
Mhm.
And then I was like, oh, it's because if they showed Harvey wearing the hat, they'd have to show a hat walking
Floating.
around, and then you would know that Harvey was real. Or a hat would magically appear as he handed it to him, and then you would know that Harvey is real. And I think that, like I said, even though I think it's very clear, I think that until you actually see the gate handle open on its own,
Yeah.
I think that's like the final boom, this is real kind of a
For
thing.
me, it was when Martin, the awful nurse,
Assistant guy?
yeah, Martin Wilson, he, but when he's
The close
talker.
Yeah.
So glad that you made note of that.
Hopefully he wasn't eating too many of those egg and onion sandwiches before.
All right, we need to go on a rant about him, but I just want to get my point out of, for me, it was when he was looking up what a puka is and he's reading a mischievous creature in, Celtic mythology. Hello,
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, yeah, that's really cool. But okay. Martin Wilson works for the sanitarium. Is he an aide? How would we describe him?
I think you would call him an orderly.
Okay, an orderly.
Yeah.
And he helps the patients in all sorts of ways. He's so rough and gross. And I just don't like him. Like, even more so than Dr. Sanderson and how he treats Miss Kelly. This guy I hate even more.
This is a real like everyone is happy in the end kind of a movie.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Everyone gets what they want. Everything's kind of resolved, and
Yeah.
there's all of these loose threads that need to be tied together. But when it happens, you're like, I don't know if I'm happy about everyone being happy, especially Wilson. The thing that kind of gets everything going is Vita, played by the great Josephine Hull, who is so wonderful, and she's got such a lovely high voice.
She's hysterical the entire time, and I love it.
Yes. I had to look up what a white slaver is. That is a man who tricks a woman into prostitution.
Oh.
And so her repeatedly calling them that. And then also later on when she's talking to the lawyer and she's like, is that all these doctors think about all day? Sex and sexual urges.
I did love that.
I was just like, all right, that's really, really funny. Especially going back to 1950.
Yeah.
Her daughter, Maggie May.
Myrtle.
Oh, I'm sorry. Myrtle May is having a somewhat of a coming out party, but it's just like a social luncheon for all the ladies of society. She's frustrated that she hasn't been able to get married, join society, be social because of Elwood's Harvey thing. And so when Wilson shows up later, it's like a man.
Right.
But he's like the worst dude. Like, he is talking so close to her. It's insane.
Yeah. And it's like her goal in life is to just become a wife.
Mhm.
Okay, because this is what your mother.
We can all relate, right?
We can all relate, just like Joe March said, right? No. What in contrast to last week, talking about Joe, how she will not go off and just be somebody's wife.
Right.
This is Myrtle's goal, is to just become a wife, and this is what her mother wants for her and has set up for her. And so she's very frustrated because she has to deal with Elwood's activity and the Harvey of it all, like you said. And so, like, this guy comes in. Listen, I'm going to be
a stranger.
It's a stranger who barges in the house looking for her uncle, which she's happy to oblige. Like, if you find him, please take him. He's not even good looking. No offense to Mr. Wilson, but like, it's not like he's a young, good looking man. He's not.
No. I mean, the actor, Jesse White, seems like a nice guy, but he's got to be, twice her age at this point.
Right.
Unless she's 40 and she's frustrated that she's been cooped up all these years.
I didn't read it that way, but I can understand that more of just like, I'll take anything that walks in the house. Like, literally.
Well, that's exactly what happened.
This has been dropped in my lap. And she's like, please, I'll make you egg and onion sandwiches. Like, please. And then.
So,
yeah.
I'm okay. Like, I'm okay. I'm not okay with him, but I'm like, okay, she's into him. Whatever. We're doing a thing here. But then they turn the corner and they walk off camera. And she screams.
Yeah, because I think he slapped her butt.
Right.
Right.
Wowie zowie.
Exactly.
This guy is a white slaver.
He's a white slaver. Yeah.
Vita was right.
And yes, I think Vita's right throughout the entire story here.
Mm-hmm.
But even when he barges in, and she's like, can I make you a sandwich? And he's not even paying attention to her until he gets super close. Like, he pins her up against like the wall, and he's just like talking this close to her.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you're a female. You'll do, is how I read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And she was like, you're a man.
You'll do. So actually, I guess they deserve each other.
Well, yeah, I guess.
It's so bad though, because then, Vita, she was taken advantage of. She was committed against her will. She went to the sanitarium to have Elwood committed. She admits to Dr. Sanderson that she tells her story in confidence of like her grief and how her brother is seeing a white rabbit named Harvey. And then sometimes she sees him, and then he's like, oh my goodness. We have to do a switcheroo here. She's the actual crazy one. We see this all the time. Men try to commit the women.
Typical.
Right. Typical. Right? Typical. I mean, the women try to commit the man before.
Right.
Yeah. The woman gets stripped.
And it's very true. Not just in America and England and around the world. They were committing women who were perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just didn't fit into society. And, people with authority deemed them crazy or hysterical.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's absolutely horrible.
Yeah. If men didn't want to deal with their wives, I'll just say you're unstable, mentally unstable, and we'll have you committed.
Mm-hmm.
What a good deal.
I want to read some of these names really quick.
Sure.
So we've got Elwood P. Dowd, which I think is such a great name that they say it 30,000 times throughout this movie. They knew what they had.
Yeah.
And then Vita Louise Simmons. Okay, all right. Dr. Chumley, which I just thought of Chumley from Pawn Stars.
Oh.
I don't know if you ever watched Pawn Stars.
Uh-huh.
But like their friend who works behind the counter, his name is Chumley.
Oh, that's funny.
Then we've got Myrtle May, Judge Gaffney. Then we get into Mrs. Ethel Chauvenet, Mr. Herman Schimmelplatzer. That's about it, really. But I don't know.
There is a woman in the beginning who comes to the party and she's singing, and she's like Tewksbury, Miss Tewksbury. Yeah, that was very amazing. That was very funny.
What was up with that song?
Yeah,
and she's like bouncing up and down while she does it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I felt like the beginning of the movie there were a lot of comical things happening, and then as it went on, it got less funny It
Yeah.
stayed pleasant and delightful, but there was a lot happening between Vita and calling Judge Gaffney and the party.
Does this movie make you cry at all?
No, but writing my notes for it made me cry.
Oh, interesting. May I ask what part?
Yeah, the grief part.
Hmm.
I've been down in the dumps with my own personal grief journey. And so
Right.
writing about how maybe just going back to what I said, that is it so bad that Harvey comforts him in a time of grief? Is
Right.
it so bad that he introduces him to everyone and Elwood has this like pleasant demeanor and doesn't care about, in the beginning this is one thing you did text me, he rips up a telegram.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what was said on it. And he treats everyone with kindness. And so that like made me emotional. And like maybe that's just the bigger picture in life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that is the conclusion that Vita comes to.
Yeah.
When the taxi driver at the end is like, "Oh, I bring people here and they're so happy." And then they get that medicine and they're angry and they're yelling and they're telling me to slow down my cab. And he doesn't say it like this, but it's like basically they turn into everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Oh, is it really so bad?
Mm-hmm.
And is it really so embarrassing that
Mm-hmm.
he's the nicest guy in town?"
Right. Because he doesn't really do anything reckless. He's not incredibly embarrassing. I know and Vita feels that he is, and Myrtle May does, but he is so just and when he meets you, he looks at you like you're the only person in the room
Right.
and treats you with such respect, eye contact, wants to give you his card. Like, I mean, that's a really good quality.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought about that when he first goes to the bar and he looks down the bar and he says something like, "A very fine day to you,"
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Back in the day, people used to greet everyone around them."
Mm-hmm.
And then as the movie continues, I was like, "Oh, no, that's still just him."
Mm-hmm.
I'm a personable person. I'll talk to the person behind the counter and I'll talk to strangers and I'll, be like, "Hey, you want to hang out sometime or you need something?" Or, but this is like on a whole other level.
I know. And I was teetering
Yeah.
with that. I kept going back and forth of like, I'm just incredibly charmed by Jimmy Stewart's portrayal in this role versus how would I feel in real life if I was just trying to get paid and this
Hmm.
person is just like asking me like, "Hey, will you want to come over for dinner tomorrow?"
Right.
Like, can I,
Right.
and trying to have a conversation with me, I would take it as like cut to the chase.
Right.
Like you're coming, but he doesn't come off phony. It's so genuine.
Yeah. And I think the movie does a good job of showing multiple reactions to his demeanor.
Yeah.
When he sees the old guy in the bar who has been in prison,
Mm-hmm.
he says to him, "Hey, you want to come over?" And that guy's like, "No, I'm okay." And then Aunt Ethel, Aunt
And Ethel.
Enid,
Yeah.
yeah,
Ethel.
she's like, "Oh, you must come over." Well, she wants him now. And then when he introduces Harvey, she's like, "Actually, I gotta go."
Mm-hmm.
But then a few times throughout the film, the people are like, "Yeah, I will," like the guy at the gate or the taxi driver. And so I think that the characters in the movie aren't all swayed by his demeanor. Like it is weird, it is odd to
Right.
a lot of the people in the film.
Yeah. And what I also found interesting about it is every time he asks, he needs to get a definitive answer.
Yeah.
He's not just taking like, "Oh yeah, sometime, at a later date." If it doesn't work out a certain time, he's like, "Well, what about this time?"
When?
Right.
Right.
What do you think that's about? Do you think that's just him needing to know that you actually will show up for him? I don't know.
I think it just shows that he's going beyond just like pleasantries.
That he means it.
Like he's like, "Oh, okay. You want to come over? When do you want to come over?"
Yeah. I want to jump over to Dr. Sanderson and Miss Kelly and the dynamic between these two.
Yeah.
Did you feel the same way about them when you first met them and then when we end? I know everybody gets a happy ending, but
Yeah.
did you soften towards Dr. Sanderson?
I think I do as he softens because of Elwood.
Yeah.
Like, at no point is he like, hey, stop flirting with my girl. I think he just sees like, oh, this is how he sees her and this is how I should have been seeing her kind of the whole time.
Yeah.
It's real weird because they're like coworkers.
I know.
And it's like, he clearly isn't super interested in her. So it's like, well, now you're only interested in me because someone else was. But, if she's in love with him, good for her.
Right. And just like the whole setup of Chumley's rest, the sanatorium of Dr. Chumley, no one speaks to. No
Yeah.
one speaks to. Only Dr.
He's reading his books.
Right. He's doing right. Dr. Sanderson handles all the patients along with Miss Kelly. And then you have Wilson, and we saw another nurse orderly. What did you think about this setup?
I can't imagine how many patients they
Yeah.
could possibly be running
Yeah.
off of one doctor.
Yeah.
And everyone also doesn't seem to be busy.
No one's busy. No one's
Yeah,
busy.
I mean that could also be just because it's like maybe they didn't want to pay for crowds and extras and actors and other background players, and
It's true. It's like a small town feel.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, Elwood and Vita are the only two people in this entire sanitarium.
Yeah. They have a hydro room. That was strange.
Yeah.
Just a room of like clawfoot bathtubs.
When Wilson's like, oh my God, I left that lady in the bathtub.
Yeah, I left the water running.
I was like, does that mean she's like chained in? Like she can't get out? Like, what does that mean? I don't know.
Yeah, they take it as they're so crazy, they can't handle it themselves. We first meet Dr. Chumley's wife.
Yeah.
Once Vita, we have the switcheroo and Vita's committed and Elwood leaves and he's looking for Harvey and he meets Chumley's wife and he talks about how he's looking for his friend Harvey and you should come to the bar at 10 p.m. And then when we end up meeting Chumley because he gets a hold of the story of what's going on, we never see the wife again. We don't even make reference of her. Because he says his dream is to I know I'm jumping ahead, but his dream is to go to Akron and meet a nice lady. And it's
Akron, Ohio.
Right, I know. Out of all the choices.
You could go anywhere. But he did say they have a group of cabins there or something like that. So it's probably somewhere that he had been before.
Yeah. But then he just wants a nice woman when he gets there.
To say they're there.
To say that, right.
Well, that's an interesting scene because as the doctor is talking to Elwood, he lays down on the couch.
Yeah.
And Elwood is sitting in the therapist's chair above him and asking him the questions now. And I don't know that scene is supposed to be fully played on for laughs. Like you said, the movie stays pleasant and it stays kind of lighthearted. But in that moment, it's quite sad that he's I would tell her things that I've never told anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And, basically she would be sympathetic to me. And it's that's this guy's dream.
Yeah.
Is just for someone to listen to him. That's really sad.
And we never see when he actually sees Harvey for this first time.
Yes, that's an interesting choice that they make to have Elwood tell them the story. But again, it delays what we as the audience know about Harvey. If this movie started in Elwood's bedroom
mm-hmm.
and him and Harvey were passing a ball back and forth,
mm-hmm.
everything in the movie would be tainted and colored by that.
Mm-hmm.
So by prolonging everything, you don't know who to believe. You don't know if you believe him or not. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when Harvey leaves Elwood can't find him.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, you're like, okay, that's strange. Because
mm-hmm.
this, even though we know Harvey's a puka, it could kind of teeter on imaginary friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then when Chumley actually sees Harvey and he's freaked out about it, but also I can't believe this is happening. You're like, oh, when did that switch happen? It happened during the chase. At some point,
mm-hmm.
His mind opened up for him to see Harvey.
Right.
And I don't know when that switch happened. And it obviously it doesn't matter, but to have the head psychiatric doctor's mind switch to allow Harvey to come in, it's because he was feeling this place of, I guess, wanting to, wanting peace, wanting someone to listen to him. So
Right.
the Buka showed up when he needed to.
Right. But then abandons him.
But then abandons him.
Which is like, I was like, okay, it's kind of a nice ending, but I was like, oh man, poor Dr. Chumley.
Yeah, I took that as maybe Harvey will go back. Or maybe
You think so?
Or maybe Harvey already gave him the time and allowance to go to Akron.
Interesting. He can stop clocks.
He can stop clocks. I mean, when you
Yeah.
think about it, I could stop my clock right now. I could go out. I could do whatever I want. Come home. No time has passed.
Wow. I'm not sure it works like that, but I understand what you mean, though.
On a surface level, sure.
Right.
We all can stop time.
And that's why I think Elwood is able to engage with people as if they're the only people in the room, and why he's able to be so kind all the time.
Yes.
Because he's just not, I mean, the one way of reading Elwood is he's a rich guy who doesn't work. He doesn't have a job.
He doesn't need to.
And so, of course, he's happy and drinks all day.
Well, sure.
The other side of it is he's a man in an incredible amount of pain who has been shown a different way of looking at life through a magical creature, and how upsetting that whole idea is to society.
Right.
And, decency, even though he's the most decent person in the entire movie.
Right.
When the movie is opening, we see Vita and Myrtle May are wearing gowns over their nice dresses because they're lying to him. They don't tell him that the luncheon is happening because they're embarrassed of him. And then they hire, and I'm glad they call the judge to have someone follow him. And this might be Harvey. It's hard to say.
It might be.
The guy starts to run down the stairs and then stops and sees the elevator, but there's no one in the elevator. So he starts running and says, "Hey, hold that elevator." And then he does like one of the best slippery floor pratfalls. Just slides and slams into the door of a doctor's office. It's hilarious.
It's so funny. And just to go back to it, like the first act, if you will, is so funny. We have that. We have Elvira, who is the
squeaky
shoes caterer. We have Vita and Judge Gaffney doing like the whisper bit.
That was really
I don't know if
funny.
you caught Vita. She like adjusts her dress, like her back. She like adjusts like where her butt is, which I thought was so funny. She says Myrtle May. Someone says to Myrtle May, like, "You look just like your grandmother." I think it was Aunt Ethel. I would know I was at her funeral.
Yeah,
it was so funny.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Aunt Ethel was very funny. Everything that she said was just
heightened.
Like when Myrtle May's trying to help her get her coat off, and she's like, "What do you want?" Like, excuse me.
She views her as a pest. How do you think the film did in terms of portraying Harvey? So he's credited at the end of the film, which I love. He's credited on IMDb as Harvey.
Oh, that's cool.
It's so cool. But we never see a shadow. All we see is doors open and close. And then we have the portrait done that Elwood has of him and Harvey painted. So it's like the only image of him. Do you think this was a good way to do it?
I do. I know the portrait is important because that leads to another gag where the lawyer is talking to Vita. Her back is turned, and she thinks that he's talking about the portrait of their mother. But he's like, and so he's like, "Oh, this lady's kind of crazy." I like it. I like how subtle it is, and I like how Vita is losing her coin purse, and then she finds it, and she's like, maybe that was Harvey. And then the dictionary thing, the encyclopedia thing. Yeah, like I think it's all just very subtle, and none of the characters can just spit out what's happening to the other characters so that everyone can get on the same page.
Yeah.
And so it's a comedy of errors, right?
Yes.
And so if there were bigger pieces of evidence of Harvey, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, and I think it would have been a little bit just cheesy. if we had a
Mhm.
guy dressed in a white rabbit suit.
Yeah. No. Yeah, no, we shouldn't see. Then you turn into Greg the Bunny,
Oh,
which, no offense to Greg the Bunny,
I love Greg the Bunny so much.
or was it Wilfred,
Wilfred. Yep. Mm-hmm.
the Elijah Wood and the dog?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back to that painting scene, though. Vita, she has this great little monologue of how she explains how a photograph shows reality when a painting shows the
I
dream
love that.
behind it and our
Mhm.
dreams that carry us on. I mean, that is just, it's a statement for life. I love it so much.
Yeah, it was great, and I was like, oh, that's maybe I should learn about art.
Yeah, right?
There's really great blocking in this towards the beginning when Elwood is talking to the guy at the bar, where at first Elwood is standing up talking to him, and between them you can see the guy at the end of the bar who's like wondering what the heck is going on.
Uh-huh.
And then Jimmy Stewart sits down and the camera lowers and zooms in, and you can still see that guy between the two of them. Their whole conversation is one take. He stands up and moves, and the camera goes back up, zooms out, and you can still see.
Mhm.
It's really, really good. And I watched on my 2.5 time, I was watching that guy the whole time, and he's hearing everything and he's reacting to it.
Yeah.
Really, really cool
Yeah.
way to shoot that scene. So I did want to ask you though, not to spend the entire episode on Wilson, but what do you think an egg and onion sandwich is?
For some reason, I pictured it as egg salad with raw onion between two pieces of bread.
See, I was picturing a fried egg with raw onion.
I mean, that's delicious too. I also could see it being a hard-boiled egg.
Right, sliced
up. Mm-hmm. But like, what a choice, you know? This too, was this a popular sandwich choice in this time of? I know this is
I don't know.
1950, but wrote it for 1947.
Have you ever seen Sandwiches of History on Instagram?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that guy.
Yeah.
I love Sandwiches of History.
Yeah.
And that's like every
Yeah.
recipe that he makes is like tuna, pickle, and dill sandwich. And the recipe is like, take tuna, put it on bread, put pickles and dill on it.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess just two thoughts.
Okay, go ahead.
So I want to quickly talk about the scene in the alley
Yeah.
with the doctor and the nurse and Elwood. And the way that the scene is staged and goes, you think that we're going to get this like big confession from Elwood, this big like admission of either insanity or that he made it up, or we think we're going to learn something that explains everything. And we kind of do. The doctor says, "What was your dad's name?" It was John. What's your best friend's name? Ivan or Earl. I don't know what it was. And then he says, "My mother said to me, in this world, Elwood, you must be oh so smart or oh so pleasant. For years, I was smart. I recommend pleasant, and you may quote me." And so is that us kind of learning where all of this comes from? That he was smart and educated and a man of society, and then his mom dies in his arms.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, okay, well, maybe I'll try being pleasant instead.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great quote. And like, we don't get anything beyond that. That's it. That's the big revelation, is that the kind man is kind.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And then to have the taxi cab driver just provide the punch of, you don't want him to change. Once he takes that serum, he's going to be like everybody else. So do you really want that? I mean, you know, that cab driver comes in, he doesn't have a major role, but we're giving him the one that provides the answer.
Yeah, my oldest son, since he's 3 years old, I've told him the same thing. I said, number 1 is be nice. Number 2 is be funny.
Yeah.
And so when he's, being funny without being nice, I say to him, I'm like, what's number 1? If you can't be funny while being nice, then you can't be funny. You have to be nice.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing that I wanted to mention which we already kind of did. I love actor roundups
Mm-hmm.
in movies. I love it.
Yeah.
Every movie should end. I think every movie should start with the actor and who they're supposed to be, and then also should end with like a little clip of them or them like doing a funny little gag.
Yeah.
It's great.
A roll call at the end. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you have any imaginary friends when you were a kid?
I had one, but I had one because I thought that I was supposed to. Like I thought that as a kid you were supposed to have an imaginary friend, and so I like pretended to have one.
What were they about?
Oh, I have no idea.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't my heart wasn't in it. It wasn't a long-lived thing. What about
I
you?
had a lot of imaginary friends. I
Oh,
had a
yeah?
lot of imaginary friends, and I had an imaginary grandma who knit me socks.
Grandma Coco.
Grandma Coco, you remember?
That's right.
Yes.
I remember that now.
Yes.
Yep.
And all my imaginary friends who, like, I would yell at my dad for closing the door. Like, if we were going in the car and he closed the door on them, I'd be like, wait, Michael. I was very, my imaginary friends were very important to me.
Right.
Yeah. So we spoke a little bit about Mary Chase and writing this play.
Mhm.
And she said inspiration, it was a dream she had about a psychiatrist
Oh.
being chased by a giant white rabbit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and then that dream reminded her of stories her Irish uncles would tell her about pukas.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's funny, and then I was reading about her, and when she's retelling this, so this was like a summary, right, about a dream. She stated it as, and then one morning at 5 a.m., a psychiatrist appeared being chased by a giant white rabbit. And I was like, wait a minute, are you saying you saw this person appear in your room?
Right.
I think she meant
Right.
like a dream state. And her biggest goal with writing this is she would observe this person outside of her house every day and they looked so sad. And she just wanted to write something to make people laugh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. And then once this became big and popular and the movie fame actually got to her, and she had a lot of issues dealing with that because then people came to her and wanted handouts. She became an alcoholic, and yeah, very interesting.
Wow, that's sad.
Yeah, Mary Chase. Josephine Hull won Academy Award and Golden Globe for her role
Nice.
as Vita. Yeah, Jimmy Stewart was nominated, but he did not win.
Yes, I saw that he lost. And, I think that it's a good performance. I don't know that it's like a career best performance or anything from him, but if you want someone, endearing, if you want your character to be endearing, you put Jimmy Stewart in this role.
Yeah. Yeah. I had trouble finding the budget for this film. And I read that it made between 2 and 5 million at the box office.
Yes. Yep.
It has an 87% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay.
3.9 on Letterboxd.
Okay. Wow. That's good.
Yeah. So Seth reached out on Twitter to our friends over there to see if they had any thoughts and feelings on Harvey. So what do you got?
Siak Diator at Siak Diator, and I know I'm saying that wrong, says, love this movie. Elwood P. Dowd is one of my favorite Jimmy's characters. Great performance by Josephine Hull, who won the Oscar, and of course, by Harvey.
Yes.
Greffoir at Greffoir204 says,
Greffoir.
I always see this as an Easter movie, despite the fact that it has nothing to do with Easter whatsoever. Due to the presence of a rabbit and the theme of renewal, plus Jimmy Stewart creates continuity with It's a Wonderful Life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's the Jimmy Stewart holiday movie marathon. You can watch Rope for Halloween because there's a murder.
Ooh.
Watch this for Easter. It's a Wonderful Life for Christmas.
Nice.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington for 4th of July. Let's see.
Ooh, this is
Who
fun.
Shot Liberty Valance for the man who shot Liberty Valance for Memorial Day. I don't know.
Okay.
Greffoir also says, anyway, my grandmother once played Myrtle May in the stage version. Isn't that awesome?
Oh, that's so cool.
Andrew #Alaska #NSTA at Desert Granite.
Wow. The name
says,
that keeps on giving.
What are some of the other giant imaginary bunny rabbit films? Order them from best to worst. And I don't know that I can do
Wow.
that.
Okay, so let's see. We have Donnie Darko, which many
Mhm.
feel like this inspired Donnie Darko, but that's false, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's not even a big rabbit in this movie.
Right. Right. Giant rabbit. I don't know, Seth. What are the other giant rabbit movies?
I mean, I wouldn't say that he's giant, but there's Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yes.
I guess I'm just thinking of imaginary rabbits at this point.
Well, I'm
Space Jam, but they're real. And Harvey's real. So.
Right.
And in Donnie Darko,
That's right.
Frank the rabbit is
That's
real.
right.
So
That's right.
there might actually be no imaginary bunny movies now that we think about it.
Yeah, I don't know if I can rate them.
No, I wouldn't.
Do you like Donnie Darko?
Yeah, I love Donnie Darko.
I feel like that was such the movie to watch when you were a teenager.
Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of people give Donnie Darko a bad rap for that.
Mhm.
They're like, oh, well, yeah, Donnie Darko, but, that's a movie you like when you're a kid and then you grow up and you realize it's all nonsense. But I still like it. I think it's a fun, Jake and Maggie,
Yeah.
Gyllenhaal acting as brother and sister.
Yeah,
They're both
yeah.
incredible all the time. Like, what's the problem? It's a little sci-fi movie. Felicia at Cinemaroni, great friend. She's also the host of the Seeing Faces in Movies podcast, which you should definitely check out.
Mm-hmm.
She says, OMG, friends. Wow.
Wow.
I honestly feel so emotional even just thinking about this film. What a gift Jimmy Stewart was to cinema, and I think he proves it here even more than in It's a Wonderful Life.
Wow.
Who else could convince us that Harvey existed? Only Jimmy could do that. She then says, should I get a Harvey tattoo? Probably.
Yes.
And I don't think she saw my joke about a Harvey tattoo, which is where I posted a blank part of my arm.
I'm sad to admit how loud I laughed at that. I loved that, Seth. That was great.
If you're a movie nerd, go out there and use that joke. I give you my permission.
I mean, it's good. It's really good.
The Slumgullion, rat emoji, at the Slumgullion, says, true story. My first acting role was Elwood. I took an acting class at 12. Our show at the end was Act 1. I adore Harvey.
Wow.
Isn't that
Wait,
cool?
so he was 12?
Yeah, playing Elwood. 12-year-old Elwood.
Do
Can you imagine?
you think they didn't really have him pretend to drink, go to the bar?
Maybe just going for chocolate milk.
Yeah, right. Give me a Nesquik.
I would go to a bar that only served chocolate milk.
I mean, I would go for the novelty of it. So we heard from some people that we do know. Let's go to a segment of the show where we hear from people that we don't know. It's called Half Star, 3-Star, 5-Star. Half-star, 3-star, 5-star. These are reviews from letterboxd.com. What are you laughing at? You throw me off. I have to say, I look forward to not reading this anymore. I'm like,
that's a lot of work,
like
huh?
2 more weeks. No. These are reviews from letterboxd.com. We start with a half-star review, which is the lowest rating you can give a film, and we go all the way up to a 5-star review, which is the highest rating you can give a movie. So there is only one half-star review.
No way.
Yes, way. And it says,
you got to read it as Jimmy Stewart. You got to do it.
I can't do it.
We can't do a movie about Jimmy Stewart and not do an
I know, but I
impersonation of him.
actually I'm going to
Oh, there's a rabbit.
I'm going to admit to you, Seth, I really wanted to come here and do it, but it just wasn't, I can't get it. I know I was thinking about when we watched this, and went around like burgers.
Right. Yeah, you gotta say burger.
But
yeah.
it's not, I can't do it.
Okay. All right, I'll tell you what. Do this one as Harvey.
That was funny, but people at home, they can't see what I
Right.
did. I held it up. I had the my notes float.
Right.
Painfully misogynistic, a woman-hating movie.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think we agree with that, but we see it.
Right. Like
we see the
we
crazy.
recognize, but I don't think this hates on women. Do you? Do you think this hates on women? I think it's more a reflection of what it was like at the time.
I mean,
Ugh.
there are women in this movie who are not hated on. There are women in this movie who are funny. And then there are the women who end up with jerks, definitely. So,
Right.
but hey, that's just one person's opinion.
Yeah.
Literally only one person's opinion too, because there's only one 5-star review.
Yeah. And I rolled this a week ago. So if there was more added, yeah. 3-star review says, one of those sentimental, vaguely supernatural comedies that's supposed to be brimming over with wisdom. Worth watching solely for Josephine Hull's famous performance.
Nice.
Yeah. 5-star review. Here is one of the most charming movies I've ever seen. It's funny, it's sad, and there's a powerful and kind of depressing story being told. I would love to see more movies that focus on mental health, since I also battle mental health issues. But this is a comedy, so it makes fun of these issues, but it is done masterfully. The film shows the ridiculous ways doctors label a person as sick, mentally ill, and so on. James Stewart gives a marvelous and truly unforgettable performance. I loved every second of this film.
Nice.
Do you think it pokes fun at the mentally ill? I think it.
No, I think it pokes fun at the system that handles mentally ill people.
Yeah.
Because take this at 100% face value. Take this movie. They're still putting a woman in who doesn't deserve it.
Right.
They're still not knowing what to do
Right.
with Elwood. It's making fun of them.
Right.
It's not making fun of mentally ill people.
Right.
And like I said, there's no other patients at the sanitarium. It's literally Elwood.
And Vita.
Hey, you want to do happies and crappies?
Yeah, I do.
It's time for happies and crappies. Happies and crappies. It's time for happies and crappies. Happies and crappies. It's time for happies and crappies.
Oof. All right. I'm ready.
Okay. Well, first, if you're new here, I just want to explain what our happies and crappies are.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to give your happies for this movie, and you're going to give your crappies for this movie. And maybe I didn't need to explain it, but
I think it might be self-explanatory.
Here's the thing, Seth. I casually in conversation today was talking to my friend, and I was telling her how my outdoor cat. There's lots of updates happening out there, and with all the feral cats and in my community. And I was like, this has been like a happy of my happies and crappies. This has been the happy of my day. And she's like, what is happies and crappies? And I'm like, I don't understand how many people don't know about happies and crappies, but
you're spreading the word.
Anyway, tell me about your happies and crappies for Harvey.
How many should I do of each?
I don't know, whatever you want to do. I honestly, I feel like this one's such a loosey-goosey segment that.
Sure. Okay. All right. So I'm going to say I have 3 happies.
Okay.
1 is the dude sliding across the floor and hitting his face against the wall.
Okay.
That's so funny.
Okay.
2 is that shot that I described. Once I noticed it, I was like, this is awesome. And if it was a bigger name director, we'd be talking about this shot as a famous shot.
Okay.
And then 2 would be the speech in the alley where he talks about his mom.
3. That was 3, right?
Okay. Yeah. My crappies are going to be, like I said, the pace of the movie, I think it's a little bit slow. And then I wish the ending was a little different. I wish we got just like a different ending with the doctor, because we have the moment where Elwood and Harvey are talking and he's like, yeah, you can go with him. It's okay. And then he kind of leaves. And then it's like 2 minutes later, he's like, oh, never mind. Like that whole thing, it's clunky. And it's like, why did we even do that if we're just going to end up together a minute later? So that's my happies and crappies.
Yes. Okay. So I'll do 3 and 3 as well. My first happy is the squeaky shoes because I chuckled a lot. Mm-hmm. My second is just how charming Jimmy Stewart's performance is and how he's miming for Harvey, and he'll just do the little things of just like move to the other side of him on a sidewalk. I noticed every movement he did, and I really, really enjoyed it. And my third is how we don't see the shadow of Harvey.
Mhm.
And I couldn't remember, and I almost thought we did when he is giving the speech in the alley. And I was like, are we going to see the shadow on the brick wall? Because it sets it up for where we very well could have
Right.
seen that. And I'm very glad that we didn't. Honestly, I know I said I had 3 crappies, but I really don't. I don't
That's
have
okay.
any crappies for this. I didn't have a problem with the pacing. I'm not even going to point out, like, yeah, I scratch that. I have no crappies.
All right, cool. Happies and happies.
Happies and happies.
Before we do our rating,
Yeah.
I'm going to predict that you and now I feel like I went too conservative now. All right, I'm going to predict that you are giving this 4 stars.
Okay. And what do you think? Am I rating it a movie, a schmovie, a film?
A film.
Okay. I am rating this as a film.
Okay.
And I'm rating this 5 stars.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah.
2 weeks in a row.
Here's the thing. I went in, as I told you, a little worried about how I was going to take it, watched it, and I was like, okay, this is like a 4.5 film.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started doing my notes and reading about Mary Chase. And then I was like, oh no, this is a 5er. This is a 5er.
Wow.
And the fact that I want to rewatch it really so closely after ending it. Yeah. And I am recommending it. I was talking to Krista about it. I was like, please watch this. You will love it. If you love Jimmy Stewart, and I also, if you love Jimmy Stewart, you should definitely watch this. But I feel like this movie is so different.
Yeah.
Do you agree, or am I just not versed in movies? Which, yes, that is true. But this just feels different to me. It's a different kind of story.
Well, I think that it maintains its earnestness. And like I said, when we go into the alley, we feel like we're gonna get somewhere, and we don't.
Yeah.
This is the story of a man who is friends with an invisible rabbit, and he's incredibly kind, and that's how it ends.
Right.
That's where we start. That's where we end.
Yeah.
And so in that way, yeah, it's a peculiar film.
It's simple, but yet so
Yep.
deep. And also, I just love the whole fantastical element of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you love cryptids.
I love cryptids.
So it makes sense. Like, it makes perfect sense to me that you watched this as a teenager.
Yeah.
And maybe you didn't put the dots together with Bigfoot and
I
Harvey,
didn't.
but
I definitely didn't
this is yeah.
until you said it.
So now you got to learn about pukas now.
Well, yeah. I started researching them a little bit. I'll continue.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So for you, Seth, I wrote down that you were going to rate this 3.5.
Wow. I think that you've guessed my rating every week, and I have not guessed yours a single time.
Wow.
Yep. When I first watched this, I rated it 3 stars,
Okay.
which for me, 2.5 means I like it. So 3 means good movie, right?
Mhm.
And then, yeah, on rewatching it, I think some of the problems that I had with it kind of just went away.
Mhm.
And I didn't just see the photograph, but I saw the dream behind the image.
Beautifully said. Yes.
Yep. And I would rate this a movie, and I also recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, especially if you like Jimmy Stewart, you have to watch this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Hey, if you like Jimmy Stewart, we'd love it if you give us a rating and a review just off the goodwill of Jimmy, James Stew. Wherever you're listening, it really helps us out. Right now, we're trying to beat Jamie Kennedy's podcast in the amount of Apple Podcast ratings that we have.
Yeah.
So it'd be really, really helpful if you would help us out with that. You can also send us an email, moviefriendspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what we got wrong about Harvey. Let us know. I want more dissenting opinions. That'd be great.
I do
oh my gosh,
too.
I loved that challengers email.
I do too. Tell us come at us with our opinions.
You can also support the show, patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. $5 a month gives you access to all of our additional shows. We are just about finished with our Freaks and Geeks rewatch. We are in the middle of our Seventh Heaven series. We have 2 shows coming that are very exciting, very cool, big shows that you've actually heard of. Instead of just shows that Michelle and I want to talk about.
I know. You're selfish.
We've got the action movies with my mom. We've got the horror movies with my wife, Jean-Marie. We just did David Cronenberg's Crash. And so if you're like, hey, movie friends, you should really do stuff by Lynch and Cronenberg and weird stuff by Kubrick. Guess what? We do that.
We have a podcast
It's
for you.
awesome.
That should be our thing. We have a show
Yeah.
for you.
Right. We have a show for that. Yeah. And it also gives you access to our Patreon-only Discord, and you get to vote for upcoming movies, upcoming monthly themes. It's a lot. It's a whole lot, including next week's movie, which I have no idea what it is.
I know. So we're ending May Shell. It's the last week coming. And I gave our patrons a list of movies they could choose from. And 2 were at a tie for a very long time. A very long time. And I was actually surprised by it.
Yeah.
But there was one winner that came through. So we will be watching and discussing.
Oh, I'm so nervous.
The Devil Wears Prada from 2006.
Wow.
Currently streaming on Max. Yeah. This to me, it's just fun. It's easy to watch, in my opinion. Have you seen it?
You're going to hear the angriest Seth that you have ever heard on this episode.
Okay. Well, I also hate patrons who voted for this. I didn't even actually ask them why they chose. Can you write in?
Oh, I never ask. Yeah.
I never ask. I'm just like, yay, thank you so much. Why did you guys, the ones that chose this, why? I mean, I know, right? Because it's one of my favorites, but.
Sure. This will be our first Meryl Streep film.
And it's The Devil Wears Prada. I love it. I love it. Nobody voted for the Patterson Gimlin Bigfoot movie. So, what a shame. That could have been a really interesting episode. A 60-second long film. Let's get into it. I really wanted that to be chosen. But anyway, Devil Wears Prada, 2006, streaming on Max. Do you love this movie? Do you hate this movie? Write in. Are you excited for Seth's rant? I can't wait.
Oh, I'm going to lose it. Yeah.
You better. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Seth.
Hey, thank you. This was fun. This was a good one to revisit. I'm glad I revisited this one.
Okay. I'm glad. I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope your house feels better.
Oh, God. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Music by Anthony Vicora. If you like the show, please subscribe and give us a rating. It really helps us find new friends. Thanks.